This is Gemara Metziah Daf Yomi Gimel, and today's share has been dedicated by a close and long time Daf Yomi learner with us as a schos Alias Neshama for his mother, Miriam bas Eliazer HaKohen, B'siyata Dishmaya. The learning of the entire Chabura should bring Miriam bas Eliezer HaKohen higher and higher in Gan Eden Shalmaila, closer to the Heilige Kisei HaKavod, as she is Nene Miziva Shechina. And she should be a Militz Yaishar for her immediate family and for the entire Chavura, B'siyata Dishmaya. We're holding on the bottom of Nun Beis Amid Beis as we continue the halachas of Ainah, but more particularly as the halachas of Ainah with regard to coins. Before we get there, 5 lines from the bottom, Kufa, we take a slight left turn for a moment into the halachas of Meiser Sheni, as Chizkiah, at the end of yesterday's daf, we're discussing such. Says the Gemara, Kufa Amar Chizkiah Meiser Sheni, Shein Bai Shava Pruta. What happens if you have Meiser Sheni that are not worth a Pruta? Oimer, he should say, Hu v'chaim shay mechulal. This is quoting Chizkiah. We read this fast yesterday, and now we'll explain it more in depth. He should say it v'chomshay, and its fifth is mechulal al ma'is arishanais, on the earlier monies. Why? It's impossible to be absolutely perfect when it comes to one's money. Asks the Gemara, Meisvei. Before we get to, let's just take a moment and look at Rashi. Rashi says, what does it mean? Rashi is 10 lines from the wide lines. Because we're discussing over here is that you're taking Meiser Sheni produce and you're deconsecrating it onto money to bring the money to Shalayim. And then there you'll buy stuff and you'll eat it there. L'chal b'shavyav is impossible, but Simsom, says Rashi, and it comes out there could be something that was not mechal, u'maisav al damav. That's why you have to add on hilchach. So that means, for example, I have a bucket of apples. I'm mechal that on $20. But I don't know, is it really $20 of apples, $22 of apples? So I'm mechal it on $22. So now really in those $22, there's some extra money there, because there's really only $20 of apples. Those extra $2 now can be tapped into, that when I have less than a pruta's worth of Meiser Sheni, I could say that original money, that original Eidef excess is going to be utilized for this Shaveh, less than a Shaveh pruta's worth. Ask the Gemara 2 lines on the bottom. Meisvei ha'tshuma v'abikurim chayavim aleihem. One is obligated on them. Misa v'chaymesh. What does this mean? We look at Rashi on the last line of the Amud. Zaray kayin tamei achle v'meizid is chayim misa, as well as a zar that eats by mistake. He has to add on an extra fifth when he pays back. And we turn over to Nun Gimel and Aleph as well. V'asurim lezarim. It is usher to a zar, a non-kayin is not allowed to consume truma and bikurim. Ve'hein nichsei kayin, and they're considered the property of the kayin. Va'ilin be'echad umeya. All different dinim of truma and bikurim. Va'ilin means it's bottle with one echad into 1 into 100. V'atayin in rechitzas yadayim. One has to wash your hands before handling them. Rashi says, as we've learned, yadayim are tameyos, shniyos is exer d'Rabbanan, and truma has the ability to become a shlishi, and therefore you have to wash your hands. V'hariv shemesh, and after one who is tamei goes to the mikvah, needs to wait for sunset before touching the truma and the bikurim. Hare'elu b'truma bikurim. All these halachas by truma and bikurim. Masha ein kein b'meiser, which do not apply by meiser. So says the Gemara, what does that last phrase mean? What does it mean, my masha ein kein b'meiser? Lav nechlal, does this not teach me the meiser batal beruba? The Gemara suggests that maybe you know which halacha we're discussing. We're discussing the halacha of oilin be'echad b'meya, that Shuma and Bikurim are nullified 1 into 100, not by meiser. So seemingly, what is the meiser nullified in? In Raiv, in the majority. So what's the kasha? V'misa dechizkiya, like we just said a moment ago. Havle davar sheyesh le'matirim. According to Chizkiya, that when you have meiser sheni less than a pruta, that you could fix it by being bachalel, by redeeming it with the excess of the money they utilized to originally deconsecrate your produce. So it's davar sheyesh le'matirim. So you now could fix this a little bit of Meiser Sheni, Chodav Sheish Lo Matir, Afilu Be'elef, Loi Batal. So says the Gemara that something that could be fixed, even Be'elef, cannot be Batal. So ask the Gemara, how you telling me Meiser Sheni could Meiser Sheni could be Batal? The klal is anything that could be rectified, could be fixed, is a Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirim. And according to Chizkiya, that it could be fixed by being machaled onto the oidef, so then it should never be batal. Answers the Gemara, you suggested that it's going back to the din of biltul b'roif. Tell malay batal klal. Maybe the halacha that it's referring to is that it's not batal at all. Meaning you're suggesting that it's said by meiser chuman bikurim, it's batal b'meya. Masheki b'meiser, you suggested, means it's batal b'roif. No, maybe masheki b'meiser means loi batil klal. It's not batal at all. Says the Gemara, 12 lines down. The first one line is loi matis amratachi. You can't suggest this. Why? Delagavi chuma, because that whole brisa was listing chumrais of chuma and bikurim, chumah did chuma katani. Kula did chuma like katani. It did not list any kulais. So you can't tell me that now with regard to meiser is going to be more chamer, because then it means that it was a kula of chuma. Says Gemara, what do you mean? Vakatani v'hein nechsei kayin. It taught us that chuma and bikurim are nechsei kayin. So therefore, that is a kula. How is it a kula that is nechsei kayin? Because once the Chuma and Bikurim have a din of being the property of the Kohen, he is able to Mekadesh Anisha with it. Whereas a Meiser is Nechsei Gavaya, belongs to Hashem. And therefore a Kohen would not be able to be Mekadesh Anisha with it. Says Gemara, no, don't suggest that. The Tani went to the Brisa Behedya. Meiser Sheni Batel Beruba. It said explicitly, the suggestion that we made that it's batal b'raiv. Don't now say mean it's never batal if you be'elef, because our brisa says explicitly it's batal b'raiv. Ube'eza meiser sheini amru, be'meiser shein by shava bruta, shenichlas Yushalayim v'yatza. Meiser says that were the shava bruta and went into Yushalayim and left. So says the Gemara. Back to our kasha. V'misa l'chizkiya. Li'avid le'le l'chizkiya. We should do like Chizkiya suggested. V'nechali al-ma'is harishaynos. Delay parik. We should deconsecrate and redeem it with the original al-ma'is harishaynos. Answers the Gemara about 12 lines from the bottom. Delay parik. The Bryce is discussing a case in which he didn't originally redeem any Meiser Sheni. Chizkiya only worked if originally, like our case, I had my bucket of apples and my $20 of apples because of the unclarity, the uncertainty of the exact value. I deconsecrated it, I redeemed it with 20, I use the word redeem, it's not really deconsecrated. I redeemed it with $22. But our case over here is that he didn't originally redeem anything, so he doesn't have that now to deal with this little bit. V'nesi meiser de'islei, v'netzarif inu. Ask the Gemara, let him bring some other meiser, combine it, and then he could be machal it, because then it'll be worth a pruta together. Answers the Gemara, derabaisa derabanan, loy mitztarfi. You're not able to combine deraisa and derabanan. V'nesi demai. let him come and mix it with Damai. Damasila Asuye, we're afraid that he might come to do it with Asuye Vadai, with something which is for sure Meiser Sheni, so Gzir Rabbanan, that we don't let him do it. Ask the Gemara, V'nesi Shtei Brutais, bring 2 Brutais, V'nachalal Alayu, bring 2 Brutais, be Machalel the Meiser Sheni onto the coins, Meiser Bepruta Mechsa, V'nachalai Aleich Yisera, and now you'll have a little bit of the second coin left, and that half a coin will use to be Machalel with it. Answers the Gemara, Misavres Pruta Mechsa Tafsa Shtei Brutais, Loi, Pruta Tafsa Pruta, Chatzi Pruta Loi Tafsa, Chatzi Pruta doesn't do anything, Hadar Havile Daraisa Derabanan. And therefore, since the Chatzi Pruta is not going to do anything, you're back to original issue of a Daraisa Derabanan. Daraisa Derabanan Lamitz Tarfi. So the Gemara persists, the Gemara says no. And again, that just reminds us, this all came off of the din of Chizkiah that said that you could be Machalel, so we're trying to figure this out. Benisi Isser says we're letting him bring an Isser. And then a larger coin, so that's the end, that can't work either. And therefore, the Gemara concludes that even according to Chizkiah, in such a scenario, when we have this Meiser Sheni, worth less than a Pruta, it will not work to redeem it. And that's the reason why the Brisa says it will be batal. Continues the Gemara. Now we're on a segue of a segue. We got into this sugya due to Chizkiah. We quoted a Brisa. Now we're going back to a Brisa that we quoted. 3 lines from the bottom of Nun Gimel Amud Aleph. Shenichlas Yushalayim v'yatza. It said, Meiser Sheni went into Yerushalayim and left, is batal, and if there's Roiv Chulin. V'amai says, why is it batal? Lihadr v'nalinu. Let him bring it back. I think an obvious kasha, everyone wonders. It says you brought in the peiros, then you took it out. Okay, so just turn back around to Yerushalayim. Says the Gemara, we're talking about a case where the Meiser Sheni become tummy, so you can't eat it at all. Says the Gemara, okay, even if for let him redeem it. Damar Rav Elazar, taught Rav Elazar on the last line, that you're allowed to redeem it as we turn over to Ngimulam and Al Beis. You're allowed to redeem it. Afilu b'Yerushalayim. Says Rav Elazar, how do we know that when Meiser Sheni becomes tamei, it can be redeemed always, even in Yerushalayim? Where do we learn it out from? Shenemar teaches the pasuk Lo Yuchal Seisai. You're not able, seis. What does that mean? Ve'in seis ela achila. In a scenario we're not able to eat it. How do we know it means achila? Shenemar v'isa mas'as meis panav ela meis panav. So says the Gemara, so why don't you redeem it? So answers the Gemara, ela b'lokuach v'kasev meiser sheni. Rather, we're talking about a case where we're talking about food that was bought with Meiser Sheni money. That food can no longer be redeemed, and that's the case that'll be batal when you take it out of Yerushalayim. Again, you came up to Yerushalayim with your money. What money? Money that came originally from Peiros Meiser Sheni. Then you go and you buy something with that food. That food now, you go and you take out of Yerushalayim. Because a meiser, that's what we're talking about. He took out with you, and that's going to be batal. Asks the Gemara 4 lines down. The koch mekasa meiser nami lifrike. What do you mean? Even this you should be able to redeem it. The tanan alakoch mekasa meiser sheni shenitma. If this stuff became tummy, yifta kirav Yehuda yifta. You're able to redeem it. Answers Gemara, Rav Yehuda Damer Yikaver. Rav Yehuda's of the opinion that when the food bought with Meiser Sheni money becomes tamei, it has to be buried. Ask the Gemara, Rav Yehuda Maria Yatza, Afilu Lo Yatza Nami. Why are we talking about a case when it left Yerushalayim? Once it became tamei, even before it left Yerushalayim, Rav Yehuda held can never be redeemed. Says Gemara, you're right. And again, we're in the middle of explaining a brisa. A brisa that was quoted to ask a kasha on Chizkiah. In the brisa, we said that when you have something that came into Yerushalayim, something with Meiser Sheni, and it left Yerushalayim, it's batal. We're trying to figure out that case. So we first suggested it was cash. Didn't work because you could bring it back in. So it was peiros, you can redeem it. So it's the food that was bought with the money of the Meiser Sheni, says the Gemara. But if that's what we're talking about, that became tummy and nothing to do with the leaving, even in Yerushalayim. Ella, says the Gemara, bitar. Ella la'ilam bitar. We're talking about tar Meiser Sheni they took out of Yerushalayim. 10 lines down, the first line is bitar. Umayato, what does it mean that it left Yerushalayim? Denofel mechitzos. Talking about a case that you brought the Meiser Sheni into Yerushalayim and then the walls fell. That's what it means by the fact that it left. And the problem is, in a scenario where the walls fell and we no longer have mechitzos, therefore, you're no longer going to be able to eat the peiros Meiser Sheni because it's no longer considered in the Chaimos Yerushalayim. And as Rashi in the 4th line spells out, Ein Meiser Nechal Sham, until the mechitzos are re-erected. Why? Because of the qualification of Lifnei Hashem Techalenu has to be consumed in front of Hashem, and if there are no mechitzos, it is not. Ask the Gemara of Amar Rava, but Rava taught mechitza lechol daraisa. To have the mechitzas wall of Yerushalayim to eat Meiser Sheni, that's a din daraisa. Mechitza is leklait dirabanan. To have the mechitza to be koile, to absorb, that once it comes in, that you cannot redeem it, that's only a din dirabanan. And therefore what? Chikaz Rabbanan, when did the Rabbanan make the gezerah that you can't redeem the peiros? Is kiyas nayul mechitzas, kiyas nayul mechitzas like gazu, and therefore Meiser Sheni should be able to be redeemed. Should be able to redeem these peiros and thereby get out of the issue. Why did it say that it has to be batal with the other chulin like gazu rabbanan? Answers the Gemara, you can't say this. 20 lines down, the first one line is loy plug rabbanan beis nayul mechitzas ben les nayul mechitzas. There's a din rabbanan in all scenarios that you're not able to redeem it once it enters into Yerushalayim. Even though right now the walls are not there, there's nothing that can be done. You can't eat it because now the walls fell. You can't redeem it because of this din derabanan, and therefore it'll have to be batal with the roiv of chulin that it is with. Rav Huna bar Yehuda Amar Rav Sheshes Chada Katani. Smack in middle of the Amid. First word on line is Rav Sheshes. I don't know, smack in middle, maybe you chop higher, 22 lines down. Rav Yehuda bar Yehuda Amar Rav Sheshes Chada Katani. Rav Yehuda bar Yehuda said him Rav Sheshes Chada Katani, the brisa, which says that Meiser Sheni is batal in the chulin, is only one case. What's the one case? And this really is another way of explaining the whole brisa. Meiser Sheni she'ein by shava pruta shenichlas Yerushalayim v'yatza. So about a case of Meiser Sheni that's now worth a shava pruta that went into Yerushalayim and left. Meaning it's not two cases. If we go back, part A of today's shiur was the part of Chizkiah of Meiser Sheni she'ein by shava pruta. Part B was Meiser Sheni that was Yatza. We're trying to figure out both statements of Chizkiah. Comes along Rav Yehuda or Rav Huna bar Yehuda and says, guess what? They're not two statements. It's all one din in the name of Rav Sheshes. So about Meiser Sheni that doesn't have a Shava Bruta, that went into Yerushalayim and left. Says the Gemara of Amai, what's the reason? Now we know all the same kashas. Bring it back to Yerushalayim and eat it. Denibel mechitzos. And if we can redeem it, Hamrav mechitza lachol daraisa mechitza lekol derabban mechigaz rabbanan kes ne'ele mechitza kes ne'ele mechitzos like Gaz rabbanan. Answers the Gemara leiplig rabbanan. Says the Gemara, okay, so we have the same leiplig. Iachi, if this is true that it's all one case, my arya ein by shaveh bruta afilu yesh by nami. Even if it's worth a shaveh bruta, what's the difference? Asks the Gemara. You still cannot redeem it. Loi mi bayi ka'amar, says Gemara, you're right. It's just teaching us a bigger chiddush. And this will bring out What is the full case according to this Rav Huna? The name Rav Sheishes Yuna Bar Yehuda Lemi Bai Yesh Bai Te Kaltan Le Mechitzos. Because if it was worth a Shava Pruta and it went into Shalayim, then it was Kailed, it was absorbed by the Mechitzos, nothing more could be done. Aval Ein Bai Imol Kaltan Le Mechitzos Kamash Malan. Then we have a Chiddush that even in that case, and Tan Rabbanan, one more Braisa, Im Gal Yigael Ish Mi Maisroi. Continues the Gemara discussing Meiser Sheni She'im Bo Yishava Pruta. Says the Gemara, Im Gal Yigael. If someone's going to redeem the Meiser Sheni, what's the halacha? At the end of the pasuk is you have to add on a chaimesh. Says the Gemara, Mi Maisroi V'loi Kol Maisroi. What does that mean? You cannot redeem all your Meiser. Problem Meiser Sheni She'im Bo Yishava Pruta cannot be redeemed. Itmar, says the Gemara, we have a machlokes in this din. When it says she'ein boi shava pruta, Rav Ami Amar ein boi, Rav Asi Amar ein bechumshay. Which part can have a shava pruta? We're talking about the Meiser Sheni is not a shava pruta. Rav Ami says Rav Asi, no, the Meiser Sheni itself is a shava pruta. But when you redeem your own produce, there's a din you have to add on an extra chaimesh. That chaimesh isn't worth a shava pruta, which means really that you have 5 times more. For example, if your Meshini is worth 4 or 5, 4.9, then a fifth of that won't be a shava pruta. That's going to be the case that you can't redeem it. Rav Yechon Amar Ein Bai Rav Shimon Lakish Amar Ein B'chumshay. Meisvei asked the Gemara on Rav Ami. I asked the Gemara on Rav Yechon that says the item itself is not worth a shava pruta. 10 lines on the bottom. I say Sheni She'im Bo Shava Pruta. It's enough if he says it and the chaimesh should be mechulal on the original money. Should sound familiar. This is our original din of Chizkiah. So says the Gemara Bishlam and the man Damar in bechumshay hainu ktanu dayoy davakav to be deyismei in itself is where the shava pruta given the bechumshay leka. But since the chaimesh does not have a shava pruta, shaber, then we can utilize this methodology of Chizkiah and redeem it on the Meiser Yishainis. Elaman Damar Ein Bai Mai Dayoy, says the Gemara, Kasha, that indeed is a good question. We'll stop over here and we'll continue with the halachas of Meiser Sheni, redeeming them, and the halacha of the extra chaimesh that has to be added on, B'siyata Dishmayim.